And a good morning, everyone, and welcome to this special program on 580 Radio and the Kansas Agriculture Network, originating from the Brett's Law Arena on the Kansas State Fairgrounds here in Hutchinson. Ironically, it is the agricultural economy that is one of the few bright spots now, but even there, producers have faced a tough year in this state and a lot of other states because of weather disasters and the uncertainty of future government support for agricultural programs. And now, opening remarks from the member of our forum panel who is a farmer from the southwest part of the state, Congressman Tim Huelskamp.
Well, thank you, Kelly, and a pleasure to be here today. And I want to thank you for the opportunity. I want to thank the folks that have joined us here today to answer some questions about what is going on in Washington. I often get asked the question, was Washington everything you thought it'd be as a freshman? I said, oh, yes, and worse. And there's a lot of work to do, and our nation is in very serious financial straits. Our federal government is literally broke, and agriculture will be part of that discussion of how we balance our budget. We'll certainly have some questions on that today. But one thing I will want to note, in Congress today, currently there are 12 agriculture producers. And what that means, there's about 424 members of Congress that I think probably need a little education on what happens in agriculture. Two complaints I hear is, Congressman, what can you do about regulation, particularly about the EPA, whether they want to regulate spilt milk, they want to regulate farm dust, they want to regulate this and that. And folks, what sometimes used to be a joke we'd laugh about, they are serious about what they want to regulate in Washington, and I'm serious about standing in the way so we can have profitability in agriculture. The biggest threat to profitability in my mind is the Environmental Protection Agency. In addition to that, I sat just a couple nights ago and listened to the President of the United States talk about how he would like to get our economy going again. And but when he mentioned free trade agreements and the fact that he would like to see those pass, I mean, Kelly, they have been sitting on his desk for months. We have consumers in South Korea today that would love to buy our stuff. Why can't they do that? Because Washington has been standing in the way, particularly this president. So we're going to be pushing the next couple of months, obviously, to make that happen. We have consumers in Vietnam that want to do the same. We need to open up some marketplaces. If we're going to ask our farmers to do more with less, we need to provide more opportunities for them to buy Kansas products and also to be free of regulations. But it's a pleasure to be here this morning, a pleasure to actually not to work on a farm bill before, but actually to have lived and tried to farm under farm bills for many years. So, Kelly, I look forward to the questions. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Our first questioner will be Teresa Brandenburg, who is from Russell, and she is a board member of the Kansas Soybean Association.
Gentlemen, throughout the history of the Farm Bill, it has been used to provide a safety net for agriculture. In difficult budget times, and as we move forward, will we be able to continue to provide that safety net that we as agricultural producers need, and what is that going to look like?
I appreciate the question and agree with many of the comments that Senator Roberts did make. There will be reductions in agriculture. The question is who will make the decisions of where those take place. I have requested of whether it's the Soybean Association, numerous other commodity groups, set some priorities. And it's not a list of 4 or 5, set a top priority, and it's always been crop insurance is a critical risk management tool, and that's the number one priority, I think, of the House Ag Committee as we move forward in this environment. But in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, that we can talk about a safety net, we can talk about programs, but I haven't met a farmer yet that wouldn't like to sell more things and find their profitability in the marketplace. That's why it's so critical. It's so critical that Kansas farmers and ranchers can sell where folks want to buy. And currently today in Vietnam, for example, the price of pork is 2 or 3 or 4 times higher than it is here. And but we have not been able to access that marketplace. And that's one of my responsibilities as a congressman, is to open those markets up for Kansas producers so we can make those changes. In addition, the regulatory side, we're going to talk about reduced spending, and we're going to open up markets. We have to make certain we don't take away the tools, whether it's herbicides, whether it's numerous other things that have changed and helped improve the productivity of agriculture. And there's some serious threats underway at the EPA that would limit that. So to me, it's a 3-pronged approach to help protect profitability in agriculture.
Thanks, Greg. Senators, Congressmen, A major challenge facing the wheat industry is that we have not yet sequenced the wheat genome, which is roughly 5 times more complex than the human genome. It is an expensive, multi-nation, multi-year endeavor. But the Wheat Genetics and the Genomics Resource Center at K-State, which was constructing the chromosome database for the project, was formally funded through earmarks. My question for you is, what is the future of this and the many other research projects at land-grant universities and the Agricultural Research Service units as the size of the federal research budget shrinks?
The senators have described the political situation. One thing I want to add to that, and I think their description was appropriate, what I've seen in the House as well. But on the industry side, we are seeing, and I'm hearing from the companies that are looking at making investments and are decided not waiting longer on USDA and are making some investments that I think will catch up wheat with some of our other crops. And I'm pretty excited to hear those, but a little warning on that. The EPA, same complaints about that, about some biotech investments we want to make in wheat and for other crops as well, that they want to make the investments and they're afraid they're going to get cut off at the pass. But having grown plenty of wheat and compared to some other crops, I think it's pretty exciting to see some of the potential we have in the private sector as well.
Thank you for the opportunity to bring a question from the livestock industry to the forum. If USDA doesn't substantially change the proposed GIPSA rule, which would dictate the way cattle are marketed, is there a legislative fix, and would you support a legislative fix to the problem?
Ken, on the House side, there is a proviso that restrict funding for this particular provision, so the House has taken a position. I did support that. I also had folks from the GIPSA staff who were in my office on Thursday, where I visited directly with them, and I understand concerns about market access, market control, concentration, and the debate there. But what I heard from the bureaucrats really scared me, is they frankly did not have an understanding of the industry and the marketing systems that have developed, particularly in the beef sector. And I followed up with questions about the cost of implementation. The only cost they cared about was the cost for the administrators, rather than the changes to the industry. So they're going back and doing additional research on the cost, but we have asked them to consider, hey, there are differences between selling pigs, chickens, and cattle, and that should be reflected in any rules changes. But I presume they're going to come back with something yet this fall and proceed ahead. But again, we'll work out the funding issue, given we put a proviso to stop that, at least for their coming fiscal year.
With the World Trade Organization's preliminary finding against country of origin labeling, and whereas 95% of the U.S. people support country of origin labeling, do you think that we as a country should give up our constitutional rights as a sovereign nation and withdraw this law?
Congressman?
I haven't read the ruling either, Darrell. We'll take a look at that. But when we're dealing with agriculture, and the only sector of the economy that actually has a surplus in exports is agriculture. And we should be very proud of that. But what that requires us is to make certain that we continue to push. And I'm sure senators say the same thing. What I've seen in a few months, agriculture is usually given short shrift, especially when we're talking about pushing internationally. And so I think we need to defend what you discuss. But in addition, we need to continue to push and defend agriculture when we're talking about countries that on one hand won't let us into their markets, but they want to export all their stuff to us for otherwise outside of agriculture. That's our job, because nearly everything we produce in Kansas goes to export, and there's huge potential there. And when we had the Vietnamese ambassador here, they proposed because the WTO, they were already going to open up that marketplace. They have not. We're going to continue to push on that. But when we talk about COOL and other things we pass that are law, I think we should adequately defend those, and we'll continue to do so.
All right. Any other quick comment that our panel would care to make? We actually have 1 minute left.
Well, given, Greg, I only had about 1/10 of the time visiting up here, which is kind of how it works in Washington. But I just want to follow up that on the regulatory side, there is no doubt, with 4,200 new regulations out of Washington in the last 2.5 years, that it is an ongoing battle, not only to defend our sovereignty as elected officials, but to defend businesses and particularly agriculture in the future.
All right,